Alrighty, good morning. This is Axel Merk, President and Chief Investment Officer of Merk Investments, and I am talking to you today from my office. The view in the background isn't quite as stunning, but the view out of the window that I tweeted out is very nice. I've been working from home most of the time the last several weeks or months by now, and I kind of missed the view. Anyway, let me talk about the markets and then pivot to some other thoughts I like to share. Um, Risk is on, I suppose. That is the S&P 500 is up 26 bucks. European markets are up strongly. Euro stocks is up 2.4%, the FTSE 1.8%, the DAX 2.7%. In Asia, the Nikkei is up 1.2%, the Hang Seng Index is up 1.4%. And so equities are doing well. Bonds are lower, 10 years down 15 ticks, the 30 years at 0.6 ticks lower. The 3-month treasury, if I find it on my screen, is 15 basis points, and the 3-month LIBOR is at 34 basis points. The Fed funds effective rate at 6 basis points. And the 2-year rate is at, do I see this correctly? Yes, is at 18 basis points, 18.8 basis points here. Anyway, global bonds are also weaker for the most part. Let me pull that up again. Yes, it's right across. The only bonds that are stronger that I see on the screen here is Mexico and Greece. But other than that, bonds are weaker around the world. Crude, West Texas at 36.89. That's up just 20 basis points or so. But Brent was at 40 bucks, I believe, earlier today. It's at 39.19 right now. It's actually down 1%, but quite a recovery in oil, obviously from the negative prices we had at some point. In the currency space, as I speak, the currency markets are moving. The euro is sliding higher here as I talk, up 60.0062 at 1.1231. We were at 108 not long ago, as you may recall. Strongest currency today is the New Zealand dollar, followed by the Norwegian crown. And the weakest are the safe havens, perceived safe havens. The yen is the weakest, down 5 basis points, and the Swiss franc is down 1 basis point. The euro itself that I mentioned earlier is up 53 basis points. And so that gives us the dollar index now at 97.489. So that was above 100 not long ago. So question is this the end of the dollar bull market or not? Remains to be seen, obviously, but the reflation that we're seeing is apparently a dollar negative, and that is not too surprising. Part of it is also the U.S. is lagging in this recovery because of the decentralized approach. It's much more difficult to open the U.S. economy, and Europe in this case seems to be steaming ahead. And let me just put in here the disclosure that I want to show each time. Good. Other than that, Brazilian real is here the strongest currency on the emerging market on the board that I keep here. And so the glass appears to be half empty, half full. My bottle here is more than half empty. Gold, I should mention, is not doing so well today. Spot gold is down 26 bucks almost at 1701, 1702. And that's sliding lower here as we speak. And part of that is as yields go higher, there's more competition to gold as you're getting more yield in the bond market. And so we'll see how that's going to play out. There's an argument for and against to be made. All this reflation should be a positive for gold, but as yields move higher, that is going to be a competition. So it's not going to be a straight line. Obviously, on the short end, we have a firm commitment to keep yields low. Okay, one topic I wanted to touch on is the unrest that we're seeing and so forth, and make some philosophical comments, not necessarily all that market related, but it's of course heartbreaking to see the sort of treatment of people because of the race, because of where they're coming from, and so forth. And so the question is, of course, what can one do? What can you do? What can I do? And so forth. And um, by all means, I respect all the protesters. If they protest, I don't condone the violence by any means, and I do draw a strong line there. But in discussions I've had, and the reason I'm kind of mentioning this here in this particular venue is that I'm a person who believes that yes, there is more we can do to try to support everybody and have everybody have access. And the question is how to go about it. And the traditional way, I'm told, is to go on the street and protest so that it becomes on top of everybody's mind, and then policymakers get their act together and induce change. Um, and that's fine if that's somebody's approach. I happen to think that we can all do the things that we do in our own way. And I am most reluctant to criticize anybody who is not doing what the folks say that we have to do, we're doing. And let me give you a very abstract example. As you guys know, I talk about monetary policy a great deal, one of the more boring topics out there. I happen to think that it's most important. And I happen to think that monetary policy is incredibly important for wealth distribution, more important than fiscal policy. And I happen to believe that if you want to support minorities, one of the better things you can do is to promote policies that promote price stability. Now, try to explain that to somebody who is all upset about what's happening right now with people getting mistreated or be disadvantaged in other ways. And I get that monetary policy isn't the most exciting topic, but I mention that because that happens to be close to my heart. And I talk to, I mean, aside from talking to an audience in public, I talk to journalists. I also talk to political journalists. I've been quoted by The Hill many times, and obviously I try not to get too much into politics because it's really only tangentially related to what I'm doing most of the time. But I do believe that in that work, I'm trying to do my share to try to provide a better place for many people. And I just happen to pick that because I happen to know about this particular topic. A lot of people might do something else. And so the kind of more extreme example is, well, why do you study butterflies, right? Getting a PhD in some arcane topic, and it may not does it help to get the world closer together? Does it help to do this or that? Well, what am I to judge? What am I to judge what somebody else is doing, what they believe will advance society? And obviously, part of that is also that we have little different views on how to advance society. So one of the discussions I had the other day was, well, you got to do this, this, and this, and this too, and you got to focus on the short-term issue at hand, and this has to stop now, this has to change now, and therefore all this other stuff isn't so important. And as many of those who have followed me for a long time are aware, I have always argued that the best short-term policy is a good long-term policy. The challenge in focusing on the short-term is that you try to patch up a problem and then you're not aware of the long-term unintended consequences. And so I do think it is worthwhile to look into that and have a broader debate that's on substance. Now, obviously, that doesn't go over too well with folks who want to have an immediate change. And then it's, oh, we haven't had a change, now is the time for action. Well, one of the things I like to remind people is that we've been here before, and if indeed that quote unquote action is going to help us so much, then wouldn't we see that in some experiments we have seen in some places? US is highly decentralized, so we've had different approaches to racial tensions and issues in different places. And so why not try to study what things has worked in some places and so forth, and versus what has not. And one of the challenges I have with some of the protesters is that they know exactly what needs to be done. Actually, they don't know exactly what needs to be done. They complain about everything that's wrong. And then if you read up on some of the kind of manifestos that they have written, then they jump to conclusions that I don't necessarily agree with. And I do believe rational people can disagree on how to pursue things. Of course, doesn't help because I'm a white male, and as such, my opinion comes of that of privilege and so forth, and it's being discounted. So that's the sort of response that I'm getting. Anyways, there's just a few cents of my view here, some food for thought. But the message here is really that we all, I believe, are trying to do our thing to make the world a better place one way or the other. And we express it differently, and we happen to have different views and approaches on how to go about it. And I think that is just fine, and it's very much appropriate. The one thing that it should not be is through looting and rioting. And I think we for the most part at least agree on that as well. And that's one of the challenges I have is when people start to you say, oh, it's understanding why these people are looting and rioting. Um, one has to be careful about going down a slippery slope of whether one is endorsing violence and as such is reducing the barrier to violence. For some people, I've heard that, oh, it doesn't matter if my house gets damaged because this is for a bigger cause. Well, I do think it matters. It doesn't matter because it's my house or this or that, but it matters because the discourse, how one discusses issues, is very, very important. It has to be civilized. Now, does that mean I condone what's been happening in Washington? No, it does not. I do think it is very troublesome. But I again have a very different take on it than most people do, I suppose. I happen to believe that if a government believes in 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 allowing the states to do what they're supposed to be doing, it is not for the federal government to interfere in that. And I don't think the government can have its cake and eat it and saying some things should be centralized and some things should be decentralized when they're clearly issues that the Constitution has not given to the federal government. And so, anyway, that's the end of my rant here. And with that, I will call it a day for today, at least on this forum. I have plenty of things that I shall be taking care of. All right, take care.